are ready to share their or would like to turn on their camera, feel free to do so. Yeah, before we get started, we'll have a couple announcements for Geodat. So you can. Yeah. Our first announcement is Geodat is having a hackathon on this Saturday. It's a free event. It'll be 3 hours long, so super short. It'll be in the nanoscience building at UW. He'll be like more like a workshop style hackathon. We call it a hackathon, but we'll be working with OpenStreetMaps, and our theme is open source data, kind of looking into that. And then we'll also provide lunch for that event. So if you have any questions, please email us, take a screenshot of this, and yeah, we'd love to see you there. RSVP by this Friday if you can, so we can get a head count for the food. Yeah. And then, so our next announcement is the geography department is hosting some skill building workshops. There's actually one right after this. They do it in Smith Hall 411, just for career support or writing and academic support. So yeah. And then our last announcement is Geodat. This club that is hosting this is looking for new officers. So if you're interested in getting involved, want to practice your leadership skills, please apply. We need people for next year to keep this club going. We're looking for directors, a secretary, a treasurer, outreach, and so they do the social media as well as a research lead, GIS and data science lead, and an intern if you're an underclassman and want to help that keep the club consistent. So yeah, please apply by the Saturday. Again, if you have questions for any of those announcements, just feel free to send us a chat or send us an email, type in the chat. Chloe will be looking at those, and then go like join our Discord or DM our Instagram and we'll get to you. Okay, so let's get started with the panel. I will be recording this, so if anyone who's like joining us online is uncomfortable with that, feel free to turn off your camera. Yeah, let me just. Oh, you started the recording. Thanks, Chloe. Okay, so yeah, just be aware of that. How this will work is I'll ask the panelists a question. Each panelist will have about 3 minutes to respond to the question, and then we'll also have an audience Q&A at the last 10 minutes. So please save your questions for the end. Yeah, I think we can get started. Yeah. Yes, these are our panelists, by the way. Let me introduce them really quick. We have Lisa, Reily, Arghya, and Joetta. If you want to read more about them, we posted this on our Instagram with their bios, and then we can also send them to you as well. But I want to have our panelists kind of introduce themselves. So our first question will be, please introduce yourself. Just talk about, say your name, what your education was, your job, career, how GIS is used in your work, and then how did you get there? So just like background information. We'll start with whoever wants to go first.
I can stap.
Okay, good. Right first.
I'm Reily Love. I have a consulting firm called Love Geo, where we are geodata nerds who can help you solve your location-based services needs. I developed a love for geography early on from traveling around with my parents who were in the Marine Corps, and we moved a lot. And I ended up going to school at 3 schools for undergraduate. I started as an engineer because as somebody who was good in science and math, I was told I should be an engineer in high school in the 80s, 1980s, that is. Then, I decided, well, this wasn't for me because I wasn't getting very good grades. My GPA was a 2.3 after 2 years in engineering. But I discovered that you could tell these computers what to do with logic statement, like if this, do that, else this, do this. So I went into computer science, but they didn't have a computer science degree at the University of Rochester, where I started. So I transferred twice until I ended up at Clark University in Worcester, Mass. That was a liberal arts school that required you to have a minor. I minored in geography, and my statistics and geography professor told me there was a new field called geographic information systems. So I went to get a master's degree at the University of South Carolina. I got that in 1988, and then went to work for ESRI after writing a client server app based from the Macintosh to a mini computer. Jack Dangerman and Clint Brown were very impressed, and they hired me to work for them. So I went to ESRI for a couple of years, but I didn't really like living in Redlands, California. And then went on to doing my PhD at UC Berkeley. I decided I really didn't want to be a professor and didn't finish my dissertation. So I moved on to working for environmental consultants, and eventually became a consultant at a very young age, because I had this computer science background, was very good at setting up very large geospatial databases, and I even became an ESRI business partner. But then, I started having a family, et cetera, et cetera. So I went back to work for people. And that's when I really, truly understood how to really use large spatial data sets, from working with Microsoft, from working with Plum Creek Timber, which is part of like Weyerhaeuser now, which we manage 12 million acres of land. Then worked with on sustainability unit and Amazon Maps, developing the Prime, the app that's for the phone that they use to scan packages and things of that nature. All these organizations had very large geodata sets that you could not manage in like flat files. You had to use database technology, and I really developed a love for SQL spatial and putting data into databases and scaling it. Learning AWS and data pipelines and things of that nature. I then went on to work for a startup firm that was bought by Toyota. They were developing HD maps for autonomous vehicles, and then Toyota itself was interested in developing a world map based on the sensors that are on all their vehicles. And that's basically my career until I started my own firm, Love Geo, again, now that I don't have a young daughter in school or needing medical insurance. She's graduated from college herself. Now I don't have so much requirements to, provide for a family. So yes, I'm doing the consulting thing again.
Well, thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to introduce themselves?
I'll go next. I'm Joetta Zablotney, and I'm a second generation Husky. So although I did not start at UW first, I got an associate's degree actually in photogrammetry long ago, aerial mapping from stereo pairs, and worked in the aerial mapping business for road design. So mainly thinking more along the land surveying side of things. And so my professional relationships were surveyors. Our clients were on the county side, road design being for engineers, engineering design. Then I went back to school, went through the computer science department like Reily here at the University of Washington, and went through that department, but landed with my degree in the geography department. Went out again into the work environment and landed in environmental consulting, and have been with a company, we subsequently merged, but pretty much the same company for a long time. Fisheries and fish passage engineering here in the Pacific Northwest. I specialize more or less in hydroelectric project relicensing. And so I've been doing that for a long time here in the Pacific Northwest, Alaska, Oregon, California, and sort of midstream in my career, I went back to school again here at the University of Washington through the MBA program, through the executive program of technology management. So there's been technology throughout my career, coming in and out of it over time, which is sort of cool just to, grow up with that. So yeah, that's my story.
Thanks, Joetta. I can jump in. I have a background in engineering as well, mechanical engineering from Kansas State University, and I have a master's in urban planning from UW. And they taught like one GIS class in the master's of urban planning program. So I'm basically self-taught, I would say, but like my entire career, I realized that I've just always been the person that works with data, no matter what I'm doing. Like I'm the person that gets handed the massive Excel files or whatever, the maps, whatever. So it just like kept building and building and building until I finally realized that like that's basically what I was doing. Like I'm a GIS professional, and that's basically just like, yeah, what I do. But I also have my own firm. I freelance. I end up doing a lot of Tableau development, which is actually related to GIS because Tableau does maps. They used to do them really poorly, but now they actually do them really well. And so often I'll get hired onto a Tableau team because I know how to deal with spatial data. And I'm actually like rather shocked at how many data scientists and other data professionals are out there that just like don't even know what a spatial join is. They just like don't have any idea how to do it. So yeah, that's kind of how GIS is used in my work. And I do like other freelancing stuff for people who just need a map. They need a map built on ArcGIS Online to like display public health data, or they need business location analytics to like figure out where they should put their businesses. Yeah, I think those are all the questions there.
I'll hop in next. So my name is Arghya Kannadaguli. My pronouns are she, her. I studied geography and data science at UW, and I graduated in 2022. I love that I get to be back here with Geodat. I founded Geodat in back when I was in college. So for those of you who don't know me, Emma, are there people in person right now? Probably. Hi. Um, yeah, it's really awesome to see Geodat up and thriving. Like, congrats on, having your hackathon this weekend. That's so awesome. Excited for you guys. Yeah, so after I graduated from UW, I was always really interested in GIS and data science applications in the environmental field. I grew up in kind of like a green collar household. If you guys don't know what green collar is, it's just environmental industry. And so I got into environmental consulting right after graduation. I was a GIS data analyst at this place called Herrera Environmental Consultants for a year and 4 months directly after graduating. And that was a really fun job, great work environment. Most of what I did was creating like static maps or for reports or creating like field maps, other geospatial applications, or doing some geospatial analysis, calculations, etc., for the engineers, scientists, and environmental planners that I was working with. So that was primarily what we did on the GIS team. And yeah, I guess that answers all the questions. Just to add one thing, I guess, is this year, I am starting my master's degree in late summer, early fall. So that's one thing that's going on currently in my life. And I'm going to be studying environmental data science. So that maybe gives you guys some ideas about, where a GIS degree and career can lead and what all similar and adjacent fields you can tie in together to pursue. So yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey,
Okay, so our next question is, what skills are employers looking for in this field? And or what skills does your job require you to do well?
I think one thing that people are looking for is subject matter expertise that maybe you don't think about as much if you're just studying GIS at the moment. But like all of us have kind of said that we have a area that we go into, like some are environmental and like Joetta probably knows tons and tons about fisheries and hydroelectricity. And I know about bus routes and active transportation and like what makes a good bike route. And so like if you sort of choose something you're interested in and then focus on that, I think that's a really good skill for an employer as opposed to just being like, well, I know GIS. Like I know how to make a map and like analyze the data because the ways that data is collected, it's really helpful to sort of know what's an anomaly. Like I know like how traffic patterns average out over the day and over the seasons, and like if I see an anomaly, like that immediately clicks in my head that like there might be something wrong. So if you know your field really well, then you can bring that to the table.
Yeah, that perfect, Lisa. That's exactly right. And we use the term SME a lot. Big data, data quality control. It's broad, and especially like hydro and relicensing. There's so many studies being done, and all kinds of different resources. So you do have to collaborate with a lot of different SMEs or equivalent in a realm that you might not know what's going on in their realm. So that's a new relationship for you, trying to teach the spatial aspect sometimes if they're very database oriented without a spatial content. That's something you'll need to teach. And so making them feel comfortable in the spatial realm and just work together. So there's a lot of team building skills you would need, and that's relationship building not only with your colleagues but in the future with your clients. And that's the really cool part. There's a very personal side of this whole career.
I'd say that, I know that, we've all like built up our tech skills and software, at least scripting, being able to automate manual tasks, especially for, data analysis, data organization is important. I would advocate everybody that's into, data science know a little bit about databases and how to query a database using SQL, whether it has spatial data or not, and really understand table data structures, which you can even use pandas or GeoPandas to do that with Python. But it's key to be able to have base skills like that so you can find data inconsistencies and errors. Because a lot of times with data science, it's cleaning the data first, finding those outliers and getting rid of them so that your analysis is clean. Data is messy and cleaning it up is key. So, some of the tools that are also good to do that are things like, on Windows, there's Notepad++, or on Mac OS, you can use Sublime. And then like directory or file comparison tools like WinMerge, Beyond Compare, or even using Linux commands like the diff command with, one directory and another directory that recursively identifies what differences there are between things. Because many times, there's many people have lots of data sets or different data files that are from different dates, and finding the right one or the most recent one is important. And sometimes you can't rely on a date stamp, and there's other things that are telling in the data. So being able to like look at differences between similar files is very important with just off-the-shelf tools.
To add to that, I think some technical skills that I think have been very useful for me as a GIS person are just knowledge of SQL, Python, and other like programming languages, if you have just like basic knowledge, it really helps you navigate databases, data systems, and like Lisa said earlier, kind of using your subject knowledge to get like context of what data means, and it also helps you go a lot faster in your job and whatever you're doing, whatever task you're working on. In terms of like qualities that you could have that employees are looking for or employers are looking for, I'd say the number one thing is being willing and excited to learn, and then also being comfortable with taking feedback. So I don't know if this applies to every GIS role, but I feel like a lot of what you're doing is working collaboratively with other people within your organization. Someone's going to ask you to do some kind of GIS related thing, and there's most likely going to be multiple rounds of like back and forth that like, hey, can you change this, or can you do that, or can you add this in, whatever. And so it's really important to be able to take feedback, even for little things like aesthetics, like if someone prefers something to look a certain way or however, just to be kind of like comfortable going with the flow and asking them questions and taking feedback well. That's one thing. And then another kind of random little thing is if you're good at making things aesthetic, that I think can take you far. Like if me personally, I love making pretty things. I have never turned in something ugly. I just can't stand it. So that's something that I got I guess complimented on a lot at my last job, that people would come to me if they were looking to make something particularly aesthetic or whatever, because I'm very like particular about that. So those are all different things that I would say can help you with your job.
I think in addition to that, like taking feedback well, but also knowing when you maybe need to stand up for yourself, right? Like when somebody recommends a terrible color scheme or, something that's just like doesn't make sense, like being able to do that tactfully and have like backup behind you, just be like, we should do this because this, that's also, well, I don't know if it's helpful. Yeah, it's helpful to everyone because in the end, it's a better product if like, because you're the expert, right?
Okay, I think we can move on to the next question. For the panelists, what are the biggest challenges you face in your current position or current or past positions?
In my experience, I've worked for really large organizations like Microsoft and Amazon, and then startup companies. And in big organizations, I think the biggest challenge is resistance to change, and political and or culture of the big organizations that are used to doing things a particular way. So you're coming in there as somebody who's probably going to have different ideas because some unless you're coming in there as a junior employee, but if they're hiring you for a more senior level role, like you're going to want to blaze your own path, and there could be resistance to you doing so. In a startup, which is different, it's really learning to, because everybody's really new there, the company's new, and learning to really look at who else is in the org that might champion your goals, working across the organization to find common stakeholders to bolster your ideas could help you get like a more meaningful foothold in that company. So startups are a little more fungible, whereas big organizations can be resistant to change. So I would say that those are two things to look for depending on which way you go in your career after college.
Yeah, I'll follow up with that. Yeah, my first job here in Pacific Northwest was with a smaller company, 10, 15 people overall for many, many years. And I came in as year 5. So like Reily said, this relationship and sort of in startup mode, it's, developing relationships internally. That's an internal marketplace, right, for your work, but also then starting to turn external, and developing your own relationships with clients to sell your skill set, whether it's, with colleagues with you or reaching out to other companies to team. So there's that whole cool dynamic outside of your company that you can engage in for work products and projects.
I'll say that one challenge that I've kind of run into in my previous positions is like that I don't know. Sometimes the work for me got a little bit monotonous, in the sense that, in the consulting firm where I worked, I think this maybe it was like a specific trait, I guess, of the GIS team was that we would, making either maps, figures for reports, or a web map, or like a field map, or it was like the same 20 tasks, I feel like over and over again, which you you really have to find ways to like stay interested, if you're doing the same things over and over again, but then also like look for other ways that you can grow. So me personally, I didn't have a lot of experience with raster analysis and working with those, so I was trying to grow in that regard, and that was something that kept me kind of interested and going. But yeah, I guess if you or if you're working in a role where you're more of a GIS technician, a lot of times it'll be you might be working on digitizing some thing that hasn't been geographically digitized yet. Like in the past, I worked as an intern at the Washington State Department of Ecology, where I was mapping historic water rights. So it was a lot of like interpreting legal documents and doing like the township range section and digitizing it on like ArcMap, and so it was like the same task over and over and over and over again for like 8 months. But like every little like new water right that I was mapping, like there was something new about it. So just finding ways to like stay interested and engaged, and then see where you can streamline things, and kind of thinking out of the box about how to stay busy, and like not just doing your specific tasks, but then also like managing those tasks, like maybe changing how the task is done or something, using your other skill sets to grow and to stay challenging yourself. That's something I'd recommend. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope it was useful.
That was
I
awesome.
think you have a good point there. Yeah. I mean, that's actually some way to actually, and as big organizations are resistant to change, if you can like demonstrate, like actually demonstrate the, an improvement in a process, and show them how much better, it'd be, or automate something that used to be manual.
Yeah.
That improves things for not just you, but for every other technician. That's something that really starts to, win, and, maybe could get you advanced to, a different position or something. So that's something that's great to be able to do.
Yeah.
For me right now in my current position, I'm a freelancer and I am an introvert. So I am not good at marketing, and like getting stuff out there and like getting people to hire me is tough for me. Like once I actually get the work, I love doing it and it works out really well. But yeah, it's a tough market out there just to like, just, and I'm just me. I don't have like a big firm to back me up or anything. So that's definitely the hardest thing right now. And in past positions, I would probably say like finding the time or getting the support to do the work. By the time you sort of get to mid-level in your career, it's like meetings, 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 which is super annoying if you're actually trying to get stuff done. So I've had a lot of conversations with managers in the past who like don't quite understand this type of work, because their work is meetings, their work is talking to people and being political and whatever. But I'm like, listen, I need 4 hours. Like I need a block of 4 hours to get anything done. Like you can't schedule a meeting in the middle of that block of 4 hours, because then I'll spend 2 hours doing it, then I'll forget what I'm doing, and then like I'll basically repeat the same 2 hours because I'll have to like get back in it. So just voicing, everyone works differently, has different work styles. So just like getting the support that I needed from my managers was kind of a challenge in the past to like, actually feel like I was being productive.
If we have time, I wanted to like add in one more thing. Having worked in consulting, I know some of our other panelists have or are as well, so you might have had similar experiences. But one challenge I ran into was, the idea of billability. I didn't know what that was before I started in consulting. And so for students in the room who may not know what that is, billability is like, or utilization rate is what proportion of the hours that you're working in a certain day are directly billable to a project that you're working on for a certain client. And in order to stay profitable, a consulting firm needs to set like billability expectations across the board for all their employees. And so like it's a totally reasonable and rational like expectation and system within the company. But as someone who wants to like, if you want to try something that's not directly billable, like if you want to work on automating some process, some internal process, or writing some little code to help, I don't know, with something internal, that it can be tough to like find time to do that. And it was definitely challenging, like managing, like kind of reminding myself like, okay, to work on, always be working on things that are like more directly project task related rather than like getting distracted and doing other things that are also interesting, but like not directly billable. So I would, to kind of sum that up, knowing like for those of you who might be interested in getting into consulting, like know that profitability will be a pretty big thing guiding what work you're doing, and how you'll need to prioritize your work and time. And that was something that was new for me. And so it was a challenge, but you get used to it pretty quick. So yeah.
Yeah, like Arghya said earlier, she likes to produce really beautiful things and not turn in things that don't look good. But there's also a trade-off between making something look really good and like be top of the line and perfect because you told the client it's going to take X amount of hours. You can't just keep spending time on it. So there's like a sweet spot that you have to find.
Absolutely. That was something I struggled with as someone who like has been very like perfectionist about things in the past. You really have to let go of that.
Okay, if that's all the answers for that question, our next question is, what was the most important thing you got out of college that has helped you now?
I can start this one off.
Go ahead.
Okay. A lot of, I think what I'm about to say is just like thank you to the geography department. Like there are so many awesome opportunities and support available in the UW geography department. And like all of those things have kind of helped me post-college in work environments. I would say one big thing is like the focus in a lot of our classes on like social impact and like things like that as part of your work. That's kind of guided me in the sense that, I was always interested in working on environmental things, but it's really kind of like solidified in my mind. So that was helpful. And then having just like support from Nell and professors to start initiatives like Geodat and Everybody Hacks and, take on those things, like that support helped me get a lot of like leadership skills and thinking on my feet skills that are very useful now. And public speaking skills as well. Like props to Emma, leading a meeting isn't easy. Although she probably makes it look easy. And then another thing that I'll say is just all the technical skills that I learned in college were super useful. Like everything I learned in GIS classes, in like the informatics minor, like that one databases class, Info 330, super useful. And then I was gonna say one other thing, but I forgot. Oh, the Departmental Honors Program. If any of you guys are considering taking that, I highly, highly recommend pursuing it. It really helped me gain a lot of research skills, which even though I don't work in research now, like I think those are very highly transferable skills that you can use anywhere. And it helped me, like, say, for example, I'm working on a project where I'm mapping some stormwater related stuff, like just the skills of researching. And if I want to get some contextual knowledge about that, I can look it up and learn about it online and then be better informed when I'm mapping or creating some product. So, yeah.
Awesome. I went to college for 11 years and all of those years were fairly long ago. But I'd say that the most important thing that I learned was that you can always keep learning more, that you do not know it all.
Right.
You might think that just because you're valedictorian that, you know everything, but you always should be open to learning more. I was just at San Francisco Climate Week last week. There was over 300 events and all sorts of technologies to, reduce carbon, remove carbon that already exists, to nature-based solutions, to restoring the land, water-based solutions. I mean, I learned so much. Every day was a learning experience for me. And, I was wondering how I could maybe apply my geodata skills to some of those technologies and discussing with the founders of companies how, do you use geospatial data or could you use geospatial data? Because many times startup companies that are new to the concept of scaling, like they might have this idea that they're working on a small space, but they need to scale that over, they might be regional, but they gotta go national and global, and all that is across things that have location. And so I'd keep that in mind as a geo person going forward, that a lot of times companies don't know where geo might be able to help them in spatial analysis. So, you can help educate others in how awesome geo is and geospatial analysis is. So I'd say, always be open to learning and then also sharing your knowledge and teaching others.
Yeah, I'll come into the conversation here. Relative to the University of Washington, I completely enjoyed their executive program. Technology management was the one I chose under the MBA term, and it was parallel to working. So you can work full time. That was encouraged. You don't have to, but the format allowed you to work full time. Then you had your school where you brought into teams. You were sort of set with a collegiate team of sorts for a year and a half. But the whole program is really wonderful because you learn things that day, that night, either a study group or in lectures. I applied it the next day. It was awesome format because everything was live as far as being able to apply it in all kinds of different realms, whether you're marketing yourself or public speaking skills, angel funding coming in. So it's like, what is that all about? Making decisions on what you heard and how their product could go forward. So highly recommend, sort of watching out for those programs in the future as you go through your career. Especially technology. I went in and out of work, school. Financial was, one of those options, right? And but think about that. It's like Reily says, it's a long-term learning process for sure.
I'm not sure that I have a great answer. I went to yeah, I basically just went to school to make sure that I could get a job. I did urban planning because I needed to switch careers, so I didn't feel like I could do that without a master's. It seemed like the easiest way to just swap out my careers. And I guess the access to internships that you have while you're in school is really important. And, you know, I'd highly recommend that everyone get at least one internship while they're in school, because that will really like help propel you later in your career.
Yeah. So our next question is, what future or what trends do you see developing over the next few years for this career field?
Emma, how focused is the GIS program on Esri? Do they have classes in like QGIS and PostGIS and Python as well?
Yes, they do. We have like our intro course is using QGIS. Some of our classes use ArcGIS. We have like a few remote sensing classes. Do you guys?
The data science, geography data science is very
Okay.
technical.
Yeah, we also have, the data science, like, we also have the data science track, and they're very technical with those kind of skills. Yeah. Does that
Awesome.
answer-
Yeah. Because I would just say that like ArcGIS and QGIS, like the graphical interface programs, are just starting. You know, I run into several projects where I'm just like, this just can't handle it. There's too much data. I can't do the analysis in you know, Arc in Esri or in QGIS, and like I have to move to Postgres, or like I was even crashing Python because I mean I probably could have used more efficient packages, but whatever. So yeah, I just think like being able to handle large data sets and understanding like shape files have limits. Obviously, you guys know that. But sometimes I forget and that screws me over because I learned GIS many years ago when shapefile was kind of the standard. So yeah, just like really understanding how to work with big data and like how to switch between different programs, like whichever one works best, like whichever one the client needs or whichever one is going to do the process more efficiently, and just like having that understanding, I think is going to be really important.
I'd like to jump in, because I can't agree more with what Lisa just talked about. Until I worked at Amazon, I never saw what big data was, and there's no way that you can process that data in a programming language. When you're using Python or any other compiled language, you're taking the data and you're doing work in memory. Well, it's a lot of times you're taking that data out of a database or a flat file, and it's in memory. And you're basically, if you try to load too much data, yeah, it's gonna crash. That's gonna crash the machine. So you need to actually store the data in a place that can be spatially indexed. There's no real spatial indexing in any of these programming languages like Python. Maybe there is some poor man's spatial index in GeoPandas, but it's not real indexing like you can get in a data store. There's a lot of file formats. You mentioned shapefile, at least that can have an index. But GeoJSON, or people are using flat files. None of that's geo-indexed. I actually had this demo I was going to show in QGIS, and how, with 1 million polygons of building footprints, Postgres, showing the data immediately, and GeoJSON might show up like one polygon 3 or 4 minutes later. It is that bad when you're dealing with big data. So understanding, how to move data around efficiently is important. And, really nowadays companies are looking for cloud resource knowledge like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. Do you know how to use the toolkits like store data in S3, Can you write a Lambda script, which can be written in Python, but do you know how to do it? And you can start with free AWS accounts, and learn a lot of these tools. There's like online classes that AWS can show you how to do that, and having those skills is important, even if you've never done that in a job, that you can talk to that. So I'd say that in terms of new trends, I'm kind of wondering where AI and ML is going to go for geodata analytics. The jury's still out on that one, I guess. But yeah, the sheer volume of data being collected now is crazy. Satellite imagery at finer and finer resolutions. Where do you store all this data and how do you process it? At Amazon, we couldn't even use Postgres. We had to use Redshift, which is like multiple machines, with a very optimized indexing scheme that was able to get the job done. I would not have been able to inventory the entire global supply chain using Oracle or Postgres or SQL Server. I had to use a cloud-based multi-machine processing engine, and that was Redshift. So yeah, the sheer size of the data these days is crazy.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, and I think on other questions, look at data over time. Look at data as it comes in the door, whether it comes from the field or you're downloading data. Question the quality, messy. Reily says it's messy stuff. So always question, where is this raw out of the field? Did somebody even look at it? Keep that in mind, confidentiality when it comes to data as well. So being able to understand that and keep data safe. But I see also that AI and being able to query data, so managing it efficiently and organizing it for future queries, and just the complete display and having it available to people. That's a bit in information platforms, basically, right? And being able to give quality data that has been scrubbed for the next person in line. So that's just keep an eye on that whole trend of how the data is moving through its processes. So people know how good it is, how clean it is. And so, yeah, just wanted to add that.
I will say that in my few years as a professional in this field, I have noticed that GIS and data science are starting to be more needed and more valued, like in many like not like traditionally like technical fields. I will say when I worked in environmental consulting, like there was like more and more emphasis, like almost every month, on like, how can we incorporate some data science or database engineering, or like more geospatial analytic stuff in our work, and then like you see these new technologies emerging that combine like data science more and more with GIS and geography, like things related to remote sensing, and then like stuff with satellite imagery. Like one thing that I became familiar with working at the Department of Ecology in the Water Resources program was this new technology called OpenET, like open evapotranspiration, that uses satellite imagery to predict like water usage in agricultural areas, and that's something that helps to like basically helps with like water resource management on like a governmental level. So I'm starting to see more and more ways that data science, AI, and things like that are being utilized to reduce the like manpower need and like help make things more efficient in like various industries. Sort of another example of how fluency with data and like data analysis is like becoming more valued everywhere across the board. Right now, I just started this like random part-time job delivering catering like a couple months ago, and I've only been here for a little over a month, and I already have seen like some ways that data analysis and like super basic database development can help here. And so I volunteered to do that, and now I'm doing that here. So, you know, there's really a need for people who can work with data everywhere. So be proud of yourself for, you know, being geographers, being getting trained in like using data, because the world needs you, and they're going to need you more and more every day.
So we were actually pretty efficient. This is our last question before we head into Q&A, but what is one piece of advice you'd give to the audience, or something you would tell your past self if you could? Or you can answer both questions.
I'd say listen more, speak less. I tended to be one who was probably thinking I knew everything before I really did. And I found out that when I was younger that I really needed to listen more and provide answers to those like things that people were speaking about, but let them speak, and then I could maybe offer them some ideas or solutions.
I wish that I would have known when I was 18 that urban planning existed, because I didn't find out about it until I was like 29. So that was sad, and that's like my preferred field right now. As far as advice, something along what I was talking about earlier is like try to figure out your work style and what works best for you as far as your day-to-day flow and like how you work, and don't be afraid to advocate for that.
Yeah, and continuing on, that's great, Lisa. You know, do what you enjoy, right? This is wide open, all kinds of applications, even our discussion today, you know, that's application development, a lot of visuals. So, you know, 3D visualization, Tableau is, you know, another visualization kind of software. So interacting with people and understanding how they perceive data, especially with data science, it's, you know, it's hard stuff, big data. So you need to you relate to those audiences, and there's a lot of them.
If I could go back in time, I would have joined the geography department sooner at UW. Just short and sweet. That's what I would tell myself.
So yeah, we'll now go into a Q&A. So for those in person, feel free to raise your hand if you want to come up to the mic, or if you just say a real short question, I'll reiterate it for the people online. And then for those in Zoom, just use the raise your hand function. You can also use the chat. I'll probably just pick on the person who's raising their hand first, but the panelists are welcome to like answer in the chat if that would be easier. So yeah, and I'll try to jump back and forth. We'll start with Noah, and then we'll go into in person. Noah, you can ask your question.
Yeah, hi. My name's Noah. I'm a senior. I'm graduating this year. I'm going to intern for the city of Tacoma in GIS. But I guess in prior internships, I did more data analytics, just plain old data analytics, no geospatial component. And I guess I'm kind of at a crossroads in deciding like what positions I'm looking at. And, you know, these skill sets, like you're talking about, have become more and more technical. You're using more and more databases and big data skills. So your Python needs to be really good. Your SQL needs to be really good. So But that being said, for like a geospatial analyst, why geospatial? Why wouldn't I just choose any other field?
Because it's more fun and we like it better. Um, I mean, that's a good question, but like I was saying before, there are so many people that get out of school as like proper data scientists with PhDs and everything, and they like cannot figure out, they like don't know what to do with geospatial data. So I would just say, like, honestly, GIS is just one branch of data science or data analysis, right? It just like focuses on geospatial and how to do spatial joins and how to do like all the spatial analysis. So I guess my answer is if you like it better, then choose that. And it does give you an edge, I think. Like it gives you, if you have all the data science stuff pretty strong and you know how to deal with geospatial data, then that will definitely give you an edge over other candidates.
Great. Yeah, and I do personally love math. So
Good.
I guess that's why I asked. I want to stay in this field. I guess, I'm curious, you said like it gives you an edge. Like, do you feel like, having that geospatial component or being in geography specifically, like helped boost your career or maybe give you new avenues or maybe you experience more career growth because of that? Like, is being in this industry specifically as a specialist in this niche an advantage compared to maybe being in just data analytics in general?
I think it depends on, it's just one area of expertise, right? Like someone might focus on machine learning or focus on, I don't know, the other data science buzzwords, and you focus on geospatial data. So like, I guess for me, it hasn't necessarily been an advantage, but as a freelancer, I think I have gotten hired, especially like I said in Tableau, because I can do maps. So that's, for me, it's worked out. I don't know. Yeah, others should jump in.
I'd agree with Lisa, it's just, you can still do the data analytics without the geospatial. I mean, knowing, SQL, Python, database structures, things of that nature is great. But also knowing, how to define a geospatial column geography or geometry, and what spatial reference ID is in Postgres. That's like really valuable, because if you can add that spatial data and you're working with fairly big data, like over 100,000 rows, you're going to be able to demonstrate that it's way faster than using other types of geospatial data from flat files or things like that you need to process with programming language like Python. So yeah, it's just it's an addition. It's something else that you have that other candidates might not have. And it opens up the door. I mean, I'm committing the rest of my career to working almost solely in climate. I have one client that's not climate based, but that said, I'll continue to support them. But everything else, I'm really focused on climate. And, I think the most pressing thing that young people need to realize is that regardless of how long your career is going to be, this world is going through a world of hurt right now. And, will we even be around in like 30 or 40 years in the same way, like living in the same level of prosperity? And we should all be thinking about how we might be able to make every job a climate job, which is what Climate Base believes in. It's a career accelerator for climate. If people haven't checked out climatebase.org, I'd highly recommend you do so and maybe look at getting into their fellowship program.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'll just-
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Arghya.
Okay. Just to add to what everyone else has said so far, I was at a career fair for like Paris County jobs recently, and then also had visited some like this environmental career fair at UW like a few months ago. And whenever I would be like talking to someone at a booth, like they would always say like, oh, GIS, like that's great. Like, so in just based on like purely anecdotal information, like I definitely think that having like a GIS background, or at least having that as a skill set within your overall abilities, is really helpful, and I think it's pretty attractive to employers, especially in the environmental field and in the public sector. So yeah.
Okay, I guess we can move on to the next question. Does anyone in our in-person audience have a question? Okay, yeah, go ahead, Jaden.
In terms of working with data sets, what data sets do you mainly analyze in urban planning?
Okay, so this is for Lisa, since you work in urban planning. What kind of data sets in urban planning do you like analyze?
Yeah.
Commonly work with and analyze. We have someone interested in urban planning here in person.
Great. So there's a lot of like zoning and parcel data. There are several branches of urban planning, but yeah, like zoning data, parcel data, so where things can be built. A lot of I specialize in transportation, so a lot of things like network analysis. So, you know, how many people can access, or like how many homes are in the walk shed area of a light rail station, right? Like how many homes are 15 minutes from the light rail station, 10 minutes from the light rail station. A lot of, and also I specialize in active transportation, so that's walking and biking, different mobilities, and things like gaps in the network. So sidewalk data is really bad. So there's some like unique ways people have made up these like these rigs on their bikes where you can bike and it will like register, it'll take video camera, it'll register like bumps in the sidewalk or gaps. And a lot of that has to do with like making the street safe for ADA accessibility as well. Things like crosswalks, like where are crosswalks missing? Like how do people get around? Bike volume data. So there's bike counters all around Seattle. So analyzing that data and like figuring out if this bike lane has actually increased bike ridership so that we can sort of prove that to city council and like get more bike lanes passed. Collision data. So where's the most deadly street? Where are people getting killed? And like, how do we address that? Sorry, that was a big, fast brain dump. Does that sort of answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
That answers this. All right. We had another question in the chat. It looks like some people already answered it. It was, are you familiar with current job market for GIS professionals in Europe? If so, how would you picture the situations there? Would that person also, their hand is still up? Do they have a question they want to ask? Unmuted? You can also type in the chat that you got your answer. Oh, okay. Their hand was not raised. Noah, do you still have another question? Otherwise, be open to more questions. Oh, we have one in person. Yes, Chloe. Yeah, the question was, do any of the panelists have experience with Microsoft Fabric for analyzing databases?
Is that a part, is that like an Azure tool? Huh. I do not, but I'm wondering if it's a multi-computational, multi-machine node compute, similar to Redshift. I'm not familiar, because I know that, Google has something offering called Big Data, and then Amazon has Redshift and Athena are their two offerings for really working with big data. And then I wasn't familiar what Azure was, so I've only used like SQL Server and Postgres on Azure, but maybe, yeah, this is new technology that they're using to compete with the other two.
I didn't know about either one. That's something to look into, I guess. Any other questions from the audience? I'll give a few minutes. If not, did you have visuals that you wanted to show, Riley? I remember
Oh.
you mentioning a demo. If we have time for that.
Sure, I could share my screen and show this QGIS project I had.
Yeah.
This is something we did at Amazon Maps. It's kind of a fun one. And then, I mean, I'd love to talk about what I did with sustainability, but I don't really have a demo for it, but because that's really like probably the biggest, most awesome task I ever did was helping calculate the first carbon footprint of Amazon. So let me see if I can share this QGIS. By the way, I've totally moved away from Esri. I haven't used Esri in many years. They tried to get Amazon to buy Esri. ESRI did invite us to the conference, and we turned them down. But let's see, share screen. See if this works for me. I'm going to share the QGIS app. Okay, so this is some, this is just a map of King County. All of this data is from King County, by the way, except for you'll see when I bring in this Prime Now GeoTrace cache, that's not from King County. But, I mean, really, I have the OpenStreetMap vector tiles displaying below. And, as we zoom in anywhere, let me zoom into the neighborhood I'm familiar with. I live in North Seattle. Here we are. Well, I live in this neighborhood right here. That's why I came down here, because I live so close. But the King County streets. This is 2016 data, maybe, when I was on this team. So I was on a team where we undertook a project. So Amazon Prime was using, and Prime Now, you might remember when Prime Now came out, and they're like, you can get stuff delivered within 1 or 2 hours. And, everybody was off, ordering maybe like, well, adults were beers and like wine so they could get it for a party that afternoon. That was like one of the top sellers, also toilet paper and things of that nature. But, so these are the streets and everything. Like if we bring in the Prime Now data and this area, you're going to see that, well, it's not uncovering anything new. But what was really cool about this project, and we actually did this as a like Skunk Works database or data project to show that our trucks were finding like new roads all over the place, and we should like not rely on Here. We're using Here, Nokia's Here product, which is a terrible name. It is a street network but they were taking every 3 months it took to update. So we were always nagging them about more current updates. And this is why, because, here's an area in Issaquah Highlands where we drove all these new streets, and, it doesn't even show in the King County data. It wasn't in the Here data. And this is actually what drove the company to create a separate team that we were called the Maps New Data Analytics team. And we actually decided that instead of using Here maps, that we were going to use OpenStreetMap as the base map for Amazon, and that we would digitize all the new roads. We brought like the JOSM tool, if you're familiar with OpenStreetMap, digitizing. We brought the JOSM tool, which allows you to edit OpenStreetMap data with all the tags into the software environment, like all the build and continuous integration tool sets at Amazon, so that we could actually give data back to OSM, because we were actually creating new data with our GPS trace. So we had to clean up this data. You'll see a lot of noise associated with this. Here's another place in Redmond where we were like driving all these new areas, before the streets were mapped. Now you see that it's in OpenStreetMap base data, but back then, when we brought up OpenStreetMap, OpenStreetMap didn't have the data either. So now it's kind of interesting because OpenStreetMap has all this data in it, but back then it was just like a big green space. And so we basically proved to the directors in Amazon and vice presidents that we should be creating our own data at Amazon. And it was a big win-win. We actually won like two pizza teams. They call them two pizza teams. One pizza is like 4 members, 8 members is 2, and like we created 2 teams from this project that we did that lasted about 3 or 4 months that we were not allowed to tell anybody what we were working on. So it's pretty cool. We had like 5 people working on this and we weren't allowed to discuss what we were really working on with any of our fellow employees. And it, you know, it really turned out as a huge win for us. One other thing we did when I was doing with the work with sustainability, after I worked for MAPS, I went to sustainability. And, you know, I was put on a team called Footprint, and our sole role was to calculate Amazon's first global footprint. And in that role, I needed to like find out where all the data was. I had to work across 10 to 15 teams, like Prime Air, the airplane flights, all the product teams that like were bringing in like raw resources from China, like on ships. We mapped every container ship that came over. We mapped every truck route from the docks to the FCs, from the FCs to the sort centers, from the sort centers to the prime delivery areas. You know, it was a massive job. And as I was telling you, I couldn't do this in a traditional database. So we had to use Redshift. I was like dealing with tables that were 20 billion records, joining with 10 billion record tables. You know, but Redshift could do that in about 30 seconds. You can't even store a table like that in Postgres. You know, but Redshift's very expensive, and Amazon didn't really care about how much we spent on AWS because we were Amazon. But you know, what was really interesting is what came out of that work. I mean, we discovered that, you know, something really interesting that came out of it was that we needed to be able to deliver 3 packages to a house or 10 packages to 1 block on a run to make things like worthwhile for Amazon. So that's when things changed on the UI to be like, oh, well, you have to order within this time to get it on this date, you know, or this is going to be a 2-day delivery, not a 1-day delivery. Or then you notice that they might have said like, oh, we'll give you a digital net book incentive if you get it on this day. All those things were to like get, or to, you know, choose your prime delivery day only on Monday. You know, if you don't need, you know, you're telling like Alexa, buy all this product, but you receive it all in fewer packages on Monday. All those things were designed to increase the amount of package delivery per block or 2 per house, so that it was, you know, that we could cut our carbon footprint and make it really worthwhile. I mean, the Climate Pledge really drove the way the UI was developed at Amazon. So it's kind of a cool story. Yeah, and it was one of the most proudest thing I ever did in my career was to inventory the global supply chain of Amazon, because it was quite a task.
Well, thank you for sharing that story and for the demo. Yeah, if anyone like has comments or questions about that, I mean, this is a good time. Otherwise, I think we're good to wrap up here. I'll leave like a minute or two. Anyone in person? Okay, well, yeah, we'll end here. Thank you to all of our panelists for joining us. This was a really like fun thing. We haven't done something like I guess at this scale yet for Geodat. So yeah, you know, I'm sure we all found that very valuable, and it was good seeing you all. Some of you that I knew prior. So yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. We'll put this recording probably on YouTube, maybe if anyone, or email us if you want it to refer back. But again, thank you. Bye.
Thanks for hosting, Emma.
Go Geodat.
Yes.
Thanks for hosting. Bye, Emma.
Bye-bye.
And everyone else. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.